All right, what's going on, everybody? John Matrix here. So today we're going to get into the last part of the Amber King's video on Jagatai Khan, the Great Khan of Warhammer, voice acted 40K lore, entire character history. There will be a link, as always, down below in the description to this original video without my commentary, etc., and to the Amber King's channel. Been a great video so far. I think we're going to get into the last part of the Horus Heresy and the siege on Terra, and then I guess some of his final conclusions and thoughts on the character. Very interesting character so far. I've kind of gone over a lot of my thoughts and summaries and the other previous two videos, so if you want to hear my thoughts so far, be sure to check out those videos. But as always, yeah, we're just gonna get on into it here. If you would like to, you can check out the YouTube membership tiers. Click the join button down below, see if any of those tiers have any kind of interest to you. I'll do a lot of these reactions live for YouTube members, and we have some exclusive discussions afterwards, etc., etc. Shameless plug. Let's get on with the video here. All right.
Can you not see the sorrow in someone's tearful eyes, or see the dread in someone's weary frown? Can you not see the fear when someone's telling lies? Can you not see that each poor soul has a heavy cross to bear, one which we hope will never come our way? Perhaps the onus is on us to show them that we care and lift their spirits and take away dismay.
The command locate Yasugai died on his lips, with a synchronicity that could not have been random. The Stormseer's mind voice was suddenly there, though racked with agony.
In the beginning, I was Shinaz,
Yasugai said, managing to convey some kind of broken humor amid the pain.
Remember that? You named me.
Do not do it.
The Khan murmured, his mind racing, guessing at last what had happened. The machinery, the underpalace, the absence of his father from the war. With sudden, terrible clarity, the pieces fell into order.
This is my command. Do not do it.
The deep ways are perilous, and Yaksha will thrive in it. You are their protector.
The Khan was moving then, striding down from the command throne. The teleporters might have been usable, even now.
Jagatai, this will end you. Do not do it. Return to the ship.
Now that I would have followed you to the end, my lord, I would have stood beside you on Terra. When I am gone, do not let them forget. Do not let them become what is hateful.
Come back.
You are their protector.
Then he was gone, wrenched out of existence. Jagatai staggered, slipping to one knee. The world seemed to sway, knocked from its axis. He looked up, and the entire bridge was tilting, falling. Ilya was screaming. The Prosperine saucer was crying aloud. The warriors of the Magyar Mazan were looking out into the void, ushering in the final battle. His legion was dying, thrust at last into the forged fire of war, out of space, out of time.
I still need you.
The Khan cast his head back, his imperious reserve broken open. He clenched his fist to the heavens and howled out his rage and his grief. And for a sparse moment, there were no more sounds, no more thoughts, only the black thunder of a primarch's mortal fury.
Gargan!
He called out, as if waking from a nightmare-plagued sleep. The Khan stood and turned towards him.
This is it.
Arvidas said.
The path of heaven. He has opened it. There will never be another chance.
The Khan was sluggish, his mind elsewhere. The rest of the bridge crew recovered themselves, restoring systems that had been primed for imminent attack. Out across the Aether-racked vacuum, the enemy was similarly recovering.
My lord, we must take it.
Arvida was conscious of the danger. The change still poured at him, prowling around the edges of his self, watching for any weakness. The portal was the warp in its rawest, deepest form. It would be murderous, but it had to be attempted.
You saw no victory.
I did not.
The primarch stared at the recovering scanner screens, at the enemy fleet that was bearing down on them again, barely halted by the tumult across the fabric of space.
A choice remains.
Ilya burst between them. The trails of angry tears were wet on her cheeks.
There is no choice.
She hissed, her eyes flashing with anger.
He did this. Honor him. Take the path.
Damn.
Still, he hesitated. The battleships were turning back towards them. Las cannon had started up again, slicing across the warp-lit abyss. The Endurance had carved its way into range, immolating anything that dared to block its passage. It was on the edge of sight now, unmagnified, colossal. Its coming marked the spoliation and heralded by despair. Only one ship could hope to stand against it. If the Legion turned now, if the order were given, then the retreat would be a bloodbath. Something needed to hold the line.
I have to face him.
The Khan said quietly.
You do not.
Raged Ilya, her grief making her wild.
Lord, if you fight him, the chance will be gone.
Urged Arvida.
There will be other days.
Not for Jagatai!
Roared the Khan, suddenly bursting into fury.
Not for Shah. My warriors have died for me this day, and every day since my whoreson brother ignited this treachery. I have watched them die year by year, their strength taken from them. No further. I will slay him if I do nothing else.
Arvida waited for the tirade to subside. To withstand the rage of an emperor's son, even one cast into doubt by grief, was no trivial feat. Yet he never moved away.
The way is clear. I can guide us if you let me.
He paused, breathing hard, knowing the peril. The rift was already beginning to close, its edges falling away back into real space as Yasugai's soul was consumed.
Our destiny is on Terra. Your destiny is on Terra.
A tense silence fell across the bridge, broken only by the sounds of battle preparation from the decks below. Ilya waited, desperate, her face white. Torgun and the other Magyar Mazan waited, still armed, making no move. Arvida waited. The Council of Stormseers waited, as did Jubal and the assembled Keshik. The Primarch looked out onto the onrush of the enemy. His hand strayed to the hilt of his tulwar, and still, he said nothing. No one moved. The maelstrom churned, sucking matter into its ravening jaws. The Death Guard came into lance range, and the first tracks of the macro cannon blasts appeared on the augers. The Khan did not look at Arvida. He did not look at Ilya, nor at Namihai, nor Jubal. Eventually, he turned to Taban.
Order all ships into the rift. Full burn.
He said, and his gaze strayed to the real viewports, to where Mortarion's flagship loomed ever larger, a silhouette of decay against the tempest of the warp.
Damn, dude. His friend Asugai, I think he said he was already wounded, you know, sacrificed himself to open a portal so that they could get their ships to Terra and hold. That's a bro right there, man. That is a Chad. That is a Giga Chad. But not only that, then just the discipline of his men to not do anything and wait for his actual order. That's a rough scenario, man, but I feel like it's also one where what other real choice do you have? You know, your friend sacrificed himself to get you there, and if you don't take that, then his sacrifice is for nothing. So you kind of have to go. It's been just one rough situation after another for Jagatai, man.
the truth will come out. You won't be able to hold the blindfold in place, and once it slips, the fury of those you deceived will be limitless. Yasugai, his oldest friend, his soldier on Chogoris, his storm seer, his compass for his people's way of life, surrounded on all sides as the fleet was being ripped apart, Yasugai sacrificed his life, emulating his own body to open a rift into the webway. That ancient pathway, crafted in a time before humanity was primordial soup. Finding the last...
That would be some kind of... wouldn't... Because it's like, it's one thing to open a portal to the warp, right? I think it would be another to open to the webway. And that would, I would think, I mean, first of all, you would have to have knowledge of the webway, if I'm correct, in order to open a pathway to it. Then not only that, doesn't it require even more power? Doesn't it require even more power to access the webway than the warp normally? I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that, but does that, you know, just show how much power and discipline and strength Yasugai actually had in commanding the warp, and not only commanding the warp, but to not be corrupted by it? Damn.
Before humanity was primordial soup. Finding the last of his strength, the man, Jagatai Yasuge, bade farewell to his closest friends, Ilya, Arvida, and his Kagan, Jagatai. He entrusted Jagatai to protect the Legion, to save them from the hatred and melancholy that was eroding them, and to stand on Terra to defend humanity. The webway opened as Yasugai's soul left this universe. The Legion began to barrel into the rift, but they were set upon. Mortarion was gunning for his brother. Jagatai wanted to fight. The cold rage began bubbling. How many friends had he lost? How many sons have spilled their blood? How much had he sacrificed? How could he let that go unavenged? But Ilya's words reached him. He couldn't let the sacrifice of all of them, Yasugai, Quinn Shah, and all the others be in vain. The White Scars powered towards the portal. The Magyar Mazan, the Death Squads who had once betrayed their Kagan, earned their redemption, using their lives to buy time for the others to escape. The guilt of letting more of his sons die for him burned in Jagatai, but the Magyar Mazan were smiling, rediscovering their love of battle as they threw themselves upon the Death Lord Mortarion. The White Scars raced through the webway, only to be set upon by their enemy's last attack. The Yakshar, demons of the Chaos God Slanesh, tore through. Their disgusting, pale, emaciated, accentuated, twisted forms, the embodiment of depravity. Led by a singular, enormous beast, a greater demon, a keeper of secrets. The creatures of Chagorian myth and nightmare, the entities the Emperor had Malkador claimed were lies, stood before them. Yet these waking nightmares did not find scared little humans before them. They found a force who had been battered, bloodied, and honed by centuries of war, and a near decade of civil conflict. Jagatai and the White Scars had suffered enough, and they unleashed themselves upon the Yakshar. No fear was in any of their hearts as they screamed high Chagoris and for the Kagan. Shiban, Jubal, and the others barreled into the Slaneshi demons, and Jagatai faced the Keeper of Secrets, the greater demon. The duel was a mind-numbing blur, the speed of both of them impossible to follow. Jagatai began to decimate the strange humanoid, chitinous form, but taking equally painful, goring wounds. Breaking his sword upon the sentient nightmare, Jagatai switched to his bare hands, unleashing the cold rage that had terrified even orcs long ago. He screamed in the Yakshar's face, There is nowhere left to hide. We know you now. We shall hunt you in every plane of reality. We shall cleanse the void, and then we shall cleanse the warp. And then, with his bare hands, he tore the demon's heart from his chest, roaring, "For the Emperor." The white scars had survived. Nearly half of them had fallen since the...
God damn, man. Again, give me this moment in a cinematic setting, dude. I don't know how many times I have to say it. I hope we get these moments in whatever cinematic universe that Henry Cavill and Amazon put together for the 40K stuff, because just seeing a battle between Jagatai Khan and a greater demon of Slanesh and them going back and forth, and what I can only picture in my mind is like a Dragon Ball-esque fight going down to fists and him tearing them apart. That would just be something to see, man. That would be something to see.
White scars had survived. Nearly half of them had fallen since the heresy had started. They had lost many friends and brothers, but finally the Legion limped to Terra. The oath had been made, and now it had been honored, and his friends and sons had bought it with their blood. Even as an enraged Leman Russ, who Jagatai had ignored his calls for aid at Chondax years ago, couldn't stop him from bringing his legion where they were destined to be. Reuniting with Sanguinius, Rogel Dawn, Leman Russ and Malkador, Jagatai and his men found a moment to gather themselves, to heal from the hell that they had been through. It was also a time to ponder. He had never been close with his father. Their interactions had always been awkward at best. He deep down knew that part of him hated him because he was an emperor, because of the lies he was told to uphold, lies he had to conquer the galaxy to enforce. It was now, with all the cards on the table, that he had begun to understand.
Yep.
Can you not see the fear when someone's telling lies? Can you not see that each poor soul has a heavy cross to bear? It was a war started and perpetuated by lies. The lies about the warp, about why the Emperor had left the crusade in Horus's hands. Perhaps even the nature of what he and the primarchs truly were. But beneath it all, it disturbed him, because he had begun to understand. Perhaps the onus is on us, to show them that we care, and lift their spirits, and take away dismay. There was a burden involved. His father lied about the warp, to deny it power. He lied about leaving the Great Crusade to work on the Webway project, a path to sever humanity's reliance on the warp. He had lied to his sons as to not burden them. He carried it, and now Jagatai would have to carry a great burden too. The War Master, after 9 years of brutal conflict, had arrived in the Sol system, and the siege of Terra had begun.
All right, here we go. The Siege of Terra. So, I mean, there really isn't much else to say about that last part of the video, other than what I already said. I just want to see that in a cinematic universe. The whole, like everything, the whole situation of him, you know, sitting in that portal, waiting to take it or not, his friend sacrificing himself to open it, them being, you know, set upon on all sides by Mortarion, whatever, and his Death Wing, Death Guard, whatever they're called. And yeah, then just that battle between him and the greater demon, and then them being, you know, greeted on Terra, if you want to call it a greeting, for the other primarchs. Like, I just want to see that, man. I want to see that story told on TV or the big screen or something. So But yeah, let's get in here to the Siege of Terra and getting into the final chapters of the video here about Jagatai Khan.
The gods demand entertainment.
I guess I should also say before moving on that I feel like, yeah, he's starting to, I guess, maybe understand the need for the lies that the Emperor told with seeing the demons and what they really were. Because I think even Malkador really said at the beginning that he just really had no idea. Like he had no real idea of what the other forces were capable of and what the Emperor really has to battle against daily and what is really on the line, you know? And I still wonder, you know, what the Emperor and I guess Malkador really knew that made them have to rush the crusade as much as they did. You know, it's again, it's a lot of what if questions and speculations that at some point I will sit down and make some videos on when I have the time to do so, because, you know, there's a lot of questions behind a lot of these things, and whether or not that was truly the you know, the Emperor knew that the Horus Heresy was going to happen and it was part of his plan, and the whole situation going forward of him, you know, potentially becoming a new Chaos God, you know, was that his whole plan to begin with, in order to, you know, if you can't beat them, join them so you can beat them kind of a situation. You know, I have my own speculations on things like that. But anyway, I feel like, yeah, Jagatai is probably getting to the realization of, I guess, maybe the need for a lot of these lies and cover-ups and what the Emperor was really trying to accomplish, which was, you know, to starve chaos from power by denying it belief, and, you know, his wanting to access the webway and creating a safe place for humanity to prepare to fight the demons of chaos, you know, etc. So
The gods demand entertainment. They demand trial and contest. We could not be allowed to defeat our own demons, for that would be boring. And boredom is the only thing Eternals fear. We are being lined up, one by one, to tear at each other's throats. I do not think they wish to see a victor. I think they wish us to fight forever, locked in madness until the universe's end. 9 years of war had led to this moment. The War Master's fleet entered the Sol system. The birthplace of humanity would be the stage for the fight for its very existence. The gambit of Lehman Russ, the assassination of Horus, had failed. Only Rogel Dawn, Jagatai, Sanguinius, the Emperor, and the billions of ordinary, superhuman and mortal people stood in the traitor's path to victory. Engaging in a layered defense, the loyalists made sure that every inch taken cost the traitors lives and resources. But in turn, this was brought with immense sacrifice. Jubal Noyan Khan, Lord of Summer Lightning, fell in the orbital fleet warfare, slain by the accursed Abaddon, right hand of Horus. Over weeks, the traitor forces smashed through, darkening the skies of Terra. The now corrupted and traitorous primarchs stood over the world that had created them, and they prepared to burn it, to take their so-called father's head. Jagatai, son of Chogoris, the man who hated wars, the man who had destroyed them from Chogoris to the stars, found himself defending them, defending the lie of safety. Millions of people trapped inside the palace had spent the last 9 years fortifying their home. The Imperial Palace had become a maze of bastions, trenchworks, and reinforced banks. Dawn had ensured that it was damn near impregnable. But what good were walls when hell itself had come knocking?
True.
The War Master's forces began their assault upon the walls, Within Dawn's layered defense structure, he had forbid Jagatai from venturing outside, but Jagatai refused. How could they just sacrifice the millions of ordinary humans, the men and women who had just taken up a rifle in the defense of their home? To sacrifice them just for time? It was the right strategic move, but devoid of human emotion. Jagatai asked Sanguinius if his prescience saw that his intervention would save lives. The angel replied, many. And then Jagatai told them that that was what he was made for. Jagatai had changed. He was a strategist to equal even Dawn, but the cost of this move was more than just those people's lives. It was their souls. We fought the Great Crusade to free humanity, not to sacrifice it. He was not like the young Khan, who destroyed an entire village when his father's death called for vengeance. He was more than just a conqueror. Isugai had seen it. He was a protector. Jagatai prepared to ride out. His life and his son's lives were in dedication to humanity. They were meant to die in their place. Perhaps Horus was exploiting this, but the cost of abandoning people that could be saved would be worse. Worse than death. Worse than if the traitors were victorious. It was the way we made you. The Emperor had made him a conqueror. Chagoras had made him a Kagan. But he had made himself more, a defender of humanity. The White Scars, the sons of Chagoras, assembled on their jet bikes. The mortal defenders, sitting afraid, crushed by the weight of their imminent death. As monsters approached, heard the rumbling behind them. They looked to the sky and saw them. The superhuman warriors, clad in gleaming white, rushing forward. Like a crashing wave, Jagatai and his sons tore into the Death Guard, finding their enemies' forms reflecting the rotten hearts within. Bloated, rotten, sickly, the Death Guard had become transformed, tainted by the warp. The road of fools. It was in the swarm of bolter fire and cleaved limbs, exploding armor, and sheer hate that Jagatai was knocked from his mount, finding himself surrounded. The Death Guard threw themselves at him, hoping their hulking, bloated forms would drown him. A warp-tainted blade found its way through his armor. He felt the immediate onrush of the disgusting warp power flood his veins, even making a primarch sick. He began to slow, unable to heal, drowning in a tide of diseased flesh. It was due to the sacrifice of one of his own sons, throwing himself off of his mount, buying space as he shriveled up with a disease that Jagatai found freedom, releasing the tainted blade and cleaving the diseased marines around him. It was only with the intervention of Sanguinius, his brother, that Jagatai was able to retreat. Many White Scars were gone, dying horrific death, but thousands of ordinary people have been saved due to their sacrifice. The unpredictability of the Khan was something the traitors, even primarchs, couldn't plan for. The weeks began to phase together. The skies of Terra became dark. Perpetual night reigned as the atmosphere became clogged with spent munition shells and the smell of blood and death.
Okay, I want to pause there. I was looking for a decent place to pause. I didn't want to go too far ahead, but I mean, like, it's kind of like that's the idea of what the primarchs really, I believe, were kind of made for, and the Astartes were made for. They were made to protect humanity. They were made to go out into the universe and cleanse the world of any worlds, I should say, galaxy worlds, or whatever, of any kind of threats to humanity, so that humans could go out in the universe and, you know, prosper and thrive and, you know, have a golden age of peace, you know, etc. So, I mean, him riding out to meet the Death Guard to save the average soldiers and average citizens, that's kind of what I feel like really they were made for. And that's, I think, what also he's coming to the realization of as well. He wasn't just made to be a conqueror, he's made to be a protector and to protect humanity against these kind of threats. So,
with spent munition shells and the smell of blood and death, Jagatai even managed to hold the Colossi Gate alongside Constantine Valdor and the Blood Angels Captain Raldoron. But the near sleepless, soul-crushing, constant battle was wearing them all down. Even to Shiban Khan, Jagatai looked emaciated, if that was even possible for a Primarch. They were losing. Millions dead, Terra burning, ground being lost. Their hope was fading. Something had to be done.
something had to change.
So Jagatai prepared for a final gambit. They made a ragged pair. The battle-ravaged warlord, his exhausted emissary.
How do you feel?
He asked.
Old.
She said.
I feel very old.
I know that feeling all too well.
Asked.
Old.
She said.
I feel very old. How do you feel?
The wisp of a smile flickered over his proud face. No one else would have ever dared to ask him that question. None of the tens of thousands of warriors under his command. None of the hundreds of thousands of auxiliary troops who marched under his banner would ever have presumed.
I feel settled.
He said, thoughtfully.
The pieces are arranged. The calculations have been made. Very soon we shall reach the point where nothing else can be done, save for the action itself.
She found that she didn't really believe that. He had said something similar on the eve of other battles, and she had believed it then. But this was different. The stakes were higher. The likelihood of destruction was overwhelming. This was not a voluntary decision, in any meaningful sense. She had studied the same reports that he had, sat in the same council gatherings. This was desperation, a final spit in the eye of fate. And if any were to benefit from what they did, then it would not be them.
But not quite, of course.
He added wryly.
There is always doubt, even more so now. He clouds everything, and even when you know the origin of the sickness, it is hard to remind yourself that it is artificial, some of it, and can be fought, and must be fought.
It's worse in the sanctum.
Ilya said.
I can imagine.
But that's not all, is it?
She took a swig of water.
I mean, it's not why you came here.
The Khan moved away from her, headed to a shelf where she kept the few old things that had been preserved. The seals, marking her entry into the Departamento Minatorum, the cheap plasteel memento of the triumph she had taken from Ulanor, a priceless dagger that Quinn Shah had given her, never drawn from its sheath.
Never do the easy thing,
he said, looking at the trinkets without really seeing them.
We suffered for that, and now, in a way, this is the easiest thing of all. To stop holding back, cut loose, just like we've been promising we'd do ever since Prospero.
He placed his hands gently on the shelf.
Yesugai saw it. He dreamed of it, he told me. That I'd end my journey fighting a creature of the dark, on a world of embers, and I tried to dismiss it. But it kept coming back to me. That's the problem with the dreams of Storm Seers. You wonder if you work to make them true. So, despite everything that makes this seem inevitable and right, it might just be me, deep down, tired of compromises, eager to get it settled. The easy thing.
She watched him as he spoke. He stood erect, just as always. In his armor he was still imposing, but she had the sense that there was more hollowness under those plates, than there had once been. The warriors of the Legion were all the same. They had been made to keep going, no matter how starved and how damaged they became. A baseline human would give up on a task after a while, but the Emperor's own would just keep fighting until the exceptional machinery of their bodies finally fell apart. Death meant nothing to them. Dishonor meant almost everything. And so it was possible that they could talk of an impossible trial, one which promised nothing but pain on the greatest conceivable scale, as the easy thing.
Why did he tell you of it?
She asked.
I don't know. Because it troubled him, I think.
Or because he believed that he had to give you the means to make a choice?
Make a choice,
Maybe.
Ilya drank a little more. She was starting to feel more like herself. You could forget what a privilege this was, to be spoken to with such frankness. Over the years, the Khan had done so only occasionally. He sounded now much as he had sounded just before the Catalyst Rift, musing on the past, fretful of the future. So to talk to him felt like a greater service than rounding up tanks.
You know, I never had a family of my own.
She told him.
I never really knew if I wanted one or not. By the time I thought about it seriously, the opportunity had gone. I don't regret it. I did what I needed to do. And just when I thought I'd got to the end of all that, I came to Ulanor and found myself tangled up with you. So I got that family in the end, and you made me furious and anxious and exhausted. All of the things I thought I might have missed.
She smiled sadly to herself.
But the last lesson was the hardest one, because then you all began to die. I was the weakest, but somehow I'm still here. Now I begin to wonder if I might still be here when you're all gone. I'd mourn you if I lasted that long, like I mourned Jagatai and Zar and Halji.
She looked up at him.
But I'd be proud, too. Throne I'd be proud. Not because you're the bravest or the best, but because you do this. You ask the question. I taught you how to keep your ammo dumps from running out, but I didn't teach you that. You always did it.
She edged upward in the chair, painfully, feeling her body betray her.
And it is time now, my Khan. This is why we came back.
He came over to her. In order to reach her level, he had to kneel. He extended his great hand, and she put hers out, and each one clasped the other.
I will make you as safe as I can here,
He said.
If they come for the place while you're gone, I'll give them hell.
Damn, dude. Some interesting and just rough interactions. I mean, there isn't really much to say about that other than, you know, it just goes to show, even though he thought he was really isolated and kind of a recluse, the impact he still had on them, on a lot of the people around him, and that he had a lot of people closer to him than he probably even realized, you know, in the end. And it was really, that's just, you know, them preparing for the inevitable end that's about to happen, you know, or potentially. Who knows what really happens to a Primarch soul when they die, you know?
The end was soon. They could all feel it. The very presence of the demon Primarch Mortarion and his death guard was stripping the hope from their very souls. Despair reigned, from the innocent civilians to the exhausted conscripts, even to the Astartes and Primarchs. This artificial despair would destroy them before Horus had even set foot inside the palace. The 5th Legion assembled. All that was left of them. Only one mortal. Ilya had earned the honor to stand beside them, the Death Guard, and Jagatai's foolish, corrupted brother Mortarion had to be defeated, lest this hanging warp despair take them all. They would retake the Lion's Gate spaceport, deny the landing platform to the traitors, and also provide a staging ground for Gilliman and the Lion's legions for when they arrived. The deception had been planted. Dozens of White Scars had allowed themselves to be captured, tortured, and slain in order to ensure the enemy
It's a hell of a sacrifice.
unprepared, misdirected. A sacrifice that none of them would ever forget. Jagatai, the man who had once fought with freedom in his heart, the man who hated lies, the man who conquered the stars for humanity, knew that he had to face Mortarion, the pox-riddled, elevated demon Primarch, and that, in most likelihood, he would not survive. Thousands assembled, the White Scars, thousands of mortals, and the last tank regiment on Terra, and they set out to battle. Utilizing an enormous mobile ship platform as cover, the Loyalists, like a procession, walked towards death, gunning for the Death Guard and the traitors. Fire and ash roaring around them as they trudged through the violated miles of Terran Earth. The mortal people were afraid. Of course they were. Reports came in of things claimed to be Xenos, but the utter, gut-wrenching sickness that sung through their bodies when they caught glimpses left doubt. Before war calls, when men and women roar with pride in their heart, how quickly that bravery melts when fire, smoke, ash, and the literal dread of death is before you. You lie to yourself and say that you are brave. Miles upon miles, the Loyalist contingent trudged until finally they met them. The bloated, disgusting caricatures of Astartes, the Death Guard, with their sickly washed armor. All of them tightened their rebreather equipment, lest they take in the disgust around them. Jagatai and the Fifth roared into the Lion's Gate spaceport, fighting in gut-wrenching, bloody combat for every inch of land, until finally he saw him, the enormous, pus-riddled, rusted, moldy thing that was his brother. There was so much.
It is interesting, though, that, I know that another one of those 40K ironies that I enjoy so much is how Mortarion was so against the warp and psychers and all that kind of stuff, but he became so corrupted as he did, turning to Nurgle and the chaos demons. It's one of those interesting, one of those interesting 40K ironies. And so we're getting to the duel between them here, between Jagatai and Mortarion, which was, foreshadowed earlier from a previous fight.
Rusted, moldy thing that was his brother. There was so much hate between them. The duel was brutal. Clashes that shattered bones rang out. Blood and sparks flew in display too fast, too apocalyptic to register with human eyes. Mortarion began to taunt his brother, decrying his weakness, telling him that he had shown him the truth of the gods of chaos, the truth that had now made him immortal, and he had run like he always had. The corrupted Death Lord was now leagues above Jagatai in strength, so much that even his Primarch body couldn't endure the onslaught. Jagatai became a bloody mess. Wounds poured from all over his smashed form. His cold rage was not enough. At the edge of death, Jagatai stumbled. Mortarion again taunted him. He had expected him to dance, to show his pathetic sword-wielding abilities. But he hadn't. He had just taken it. He had taken the blows.
It's the whole
With
point.
blood choking in his mouth, a cracked visage looked back and smiled. I absorbed the pain. The terminus est. You gave up. I did not. My endurance is superior. The Death Lord froze. The cocky, cracked visage, the pus-ridden, corrupted face of Mortarion contorted, turning into the epitome of rage as Jagatai laughed, the wheezing howl of a dead man. The words cut deeper than any blade ever could, lifting his broken form from the floor. Jagatai seized the opportunity, unleashing everything he had left, finally dancing as he tore ribbons of flesh from his corrupted brother. Faster, faster, Jagatai moved, his heart fueled only by the spirit of Chogoris, the cold rage for all he and his sons had suffered, and for humanity. Finally, the moment came when Mortarion plunged his scythe deep into the Khan's chest, bursting through his back in a shower of blood. Jagatai locked himself onto it, dragging his body down the length of the scythe with his bare hands, until he was finally face to face with his twisted brother, and with the last of his strength, he tore his brother's head from his shoulders, banishing the demon back into the warp.
And it's true. I mean, when you think about it, it's true. Like, Mortarion gave in. You know, he gave into the corruption, and he gave into the temptation, and he gave in to essentially, you know, he, like I said, he was so against the warp, the use of the warp and psychers, but in the end, he gave into it and became what he hated the most. And, you know, Jagatai was right, and he endured all the wounds that he gave him. And it was one of those situations where I think it was, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like it was one of those situations where Jagatai was like luring him to false sense of security so that he could unleash his, you know, sword dance moves. And then, yeah, he got the upper hand, and eventually he decapitated him. He took his head off. So, I mean, talk about, you know, the Giga Chad move. And again, it's one of those, what happens to a Primarch soul when they die, you know? I mean, the corrupted ones, they obviously go back in the warp and they reform and they become their demon forms again. But, you know, the, like, Jagatai and Sanguinius and those Primarchs, what really happens to them? Are they even really dead? Can their souls be reformed? You know, is it something like Magnus where they might be shattered into fragments and they can be put back together? I don't really know. So, but again, I've said it and throughout all of these videos in Jagatai, I just want to see this on the big screen. You know, I want to see this in the cinematic universe. Let's do it. I'm ready.
I sometimes imagined how I would feel if we ever came up against a foe we could not defeat, where nothing remained but to fall back again and again, weakening further with every encounter, watching the lifeblood slowly drain out of those around us as the noose tightened. I hoped and believed that I would do so as they did, and keep fighting. The Kagan, the Warhawk of Chogoris, lied broken on the world where he was created, under black skies, as humanity fought for its very existence. Ilya, general and confidant of the Primarch, came raging in on a land speeder. The closer she came, she heard the shouting over the explosions and bolter fire. Damag, Damag. The word roared from the throats of the white scars, and in an instant she knew what it meant as the horror washed over her.
Yeah.
Damag, Damag. The sons of Chogoris cried, death. It was the war cry of a warrior's death, as Mortarion's rotten soul had been banished back to the warp. Both the Death Guard and the White Scars felt something overtake them, A soul-crushing hollowness washed over the white scars. They dropped their weapons. They felt sick. Their Kagan, their father, was gone. Just as quickly as the grief had come, the rage followed. Damarg, they cried into the air as their souls sung for their fallen Kagan. And like a tide of hate, they washed over the confused Death Guard. Ilya found her way through, finally laying eyes upon the sight that broke her. Was it even a corpse? This mountain of battered flesh that had once been the Warhawk of Chogoris. Jagatai, the defender of humanity, gave his life. The underestimated, the forgotten, the misunderstood had made the sacrifice. The oath had been made, and now it was fulfilled. Touching her hand to the only part of her friend that was not gore and blood, Ilya wept. But as the despair almost took her, she felt something. She asked those around her to check for a pulse, but there was nothing. But she knew in her heart that she had felt something. Malkador. She had to get him to Malkador. Perhaps there was a chance. Dragging the corpse of their lord up, they made a desperate gambit back to the palace as the remaining White Scars held the spaceport. No more would they attack and retreat. This was where he had fallen, their father. This was sacred ground, and they would die in its defense. Reaching Malkador's side, Jagatai was taken, placed within a mysterious device. There his body lay, as the battle for the fate of humanity roared on above. Jagatai lived. He had given his life to the Imperium, for the father whom he had never loved, against a brother that he did. He had defended an empire that never wanted him, against an army that would have taken him in a heartbeat. When he awoke, the universe had changed forever. The Loyalists had won. Horus had been slain. The traitors scattered, but Sanguinius was dead. The Emperor was crippled, interned upon the Golden Throne. The dream, the great vision had been murdered. Jagatai's treacherous brothers had seen to that. Magnus, Horus, and Sanguinius, the only brothers he had ever loved, were gone or corrupted. Usugai, Gyuhun, Hasek, Quin Shah, Jubal, and as the decades passed, even Ilya, he had outlived them all. The man who had just wanted to embrace the freedom of conquest under the azure skies of Chogoris had sacrificed so much. The man who'd hated...
I mean, yeah, I'd said it before, and we're getting to the conclusion of the video, so I don't know, this might be kind of tying into my final thoughts, but it's just, you know, he really is kind of just a tragic character. I feel like a lot of the primarchs will probably end up being that way in some degree, but you know, the situation where his life almost really was never his own. He never really kind of had the choices to do anything. Even the capsule that he was in was supposed to go to a different world, and some kind of, you know, I don't know if it was the Chaos Gods or some other force, you know, switched his capsule with, I guess, Fulgrims or something like that, and he ended up going to Chogoris, and he was supposed to go to a different world, so his entire upbringing was different than what it was supposed to be. But you know, he was forced, I've talked about this in the other videos, forced to fight, you know, for the Imperium to save his people. Basically, all of his actions were to save and preserve his people and his way of life, essentially. He fought for the Imperium going against his own beliefs, because if he didn't, he knew that he would be destroyed by the Emperor and his people would be wiped out. So he fought for them. And it's like he said, never really truly trusted the Emperor, believed the Emperor was a tyrant, didn't really like the secrets and the lies, went against his entire belief system, which was, about honor and, hated lying, and really just kind of spent most of his life fighting for the Imperium, trying to run away from, I guess, a lot of, I don't know if necessarily it's responsibilities, it's not necessarily the right word, but I guess just running away from the idea of what the Imperium was and just trying to find, I guess, peace and freedom in the conquest, and the heat of battle, which is what he wanted for his upbringing. But then just during the Horus Heresy, all the choices and betrayals he had to go through, as he stated in the video, does he fight for the Emperor, who he never believed in? Or does he fight for Horus, who's someone he really did care about? The Imperium never really wanted him or his people, versus Horus, who would have taken him in an instant to fight for him. But what kind of future would that have been for him and his people? Giving into the chaos, corruption, and et cetera, et cetera. So he ended up fighting for the Imperium to, again, save his people, sacrificing those closest to him in order to do so, sacrificing his body and, to do so, being betrayed by people who were closest to him, and not really knowing what the truth was. It's honestly surprising to me that, because of him learning that, Leman Russ, killed Magnus, who was one of the only primarchs he ever felt close to because of his upbringing and culture and his belief in psychers and their abilities with his Stormseers, wouldn't have just blindly gone into a rage and gone after him to begin with, and believed, the false information. So I don't know. He's just a tragic character, really, being forced into situations that he never really wanted to be in and having to fight for causes and things that he never really believed in. But I guess in the end, seeing what chaos and the demons really were came, I guess, to start to understand what the Emperor was about and what the secrecy was and why the lies were there, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know, maybe he came to an understanding in the end of who the Emperor, like what the Emperor was going through and why a lot of the stuff was necessary. So I don't know, but it's just a very tragic character who sacrificed a lot of his friends and really sacrificed a lot so that his people could be preserved. His people's ways, etc.
Did the lie Horus had sacrificed so much? The man who'd hated the lies had suffered the most because of them. He had found fraternity, obligation, but for those who had felt that obligation too were gone. Only grief left in its wake. The man who had feared decrepitude and the lie of safety that wars provided had given his life to defend them. Never do the easy thing. You are their protector. Perhaps in all this suffering, he had finally found the one thing he had never set out to accomplish. Understanding his father, the Emperor, a man who Malcador long ago had told him he had sacrificed more than anyone.
And that's what I was really kind of getting into before was, I think, Malcador really told him all this to begin with. And he never really, I guess, kind of understood it until he saw the denizens of chaos and the demons and what they were, and then I think he started to finally come to an understanding of what the Emperor was fighting, what the Emperor had been working towards for the betterment of humanity and for his people, essentially. You know, fighting for the emperor and doing these lives was a sacrifice that would have preserved, you know, had the emperor been able to, you know, finish the Webway project, and humanity would have had a sanctuary to go into. That would have been the preservation of his people and potentially their way of life. They could have had their own planet section of, you know, whatever in the Webway where they could have lived out their lives as they wanted to, you know. So I think, yeah, in the end, he started to understand, you know, Jagatai started to really understand what Malcador what Malcador told him when they first met, and got more of an understanding of who the Emperor was and what the Emperor was trying to accomplish.
Had told the Emperor, a man who Malcador long ago had told him he had sacrificed more than anyone, because that is what is required to walk the path as a defender of humanity. A new era had begun. The Imperium had survived, and with the Reformation under the direction of Rabute Gilliman, the legions were divided, broken into 1,000-man chapters, so that no individual could ever wield such power again. Something Jagatai accepted in his head, but found tumultuous in his heart. To divide the people of Chogoris. He was a unifier. That was his reason for conquest. But at the risk of another civil war, the surviving legions and primarchs agreed. For 70 years, Jagatai led the White Scars, following the heresy, pushing the traitors all the way to the Eye of Terra, that disgusting warp rift. It would be at the Battle of Corisil 5, where Jagatai was unleashing himself upon a Drukhari force that had assailed Chogoris during the heresy, that he was lost, disappearing within a Webway portal, surrounded by his elite Keshik. For 10,000 years, the songs and battle cries of the sons of Chogoris have lauded their great Kagan, awaiting for the day the quiet barbarian, the conqueror, the oath keeper, the son of Chogoris, the warhawk of Terra, the defender of humanity, returns.
Warriors of Chogoris, brothers of the great tribe, the Star Hunt calls you. Do you not hear it? The battle's red edge is your home, the respect of your kinsmen, your hurt. Plunge into the enemy's breast like a blade, cut out his heart, and you will know fulfillment. The Emperor has given us strength. In return, we give him victory.
Interesting. Well, there you have it. There you have it. Jagatai Khan, the great Khan of Warhammer, voice acted 40K lore, entire character history by the Amber King. What a great video, man. Great video and a great character. And you could see throughout his video kind of his character progression, you know, going from almost, I don't know if you want to say like a petulant child, but essentially going from that kind of child, almost teenage, kind of rebellious, I know better stance, who, and then in the end kind of coming to an understanding of, more of an understanding of the Emperor and his actions, and why some of the things the Emperor was doing had to be done the way they were, even though they were against his core beliefs. But yeah, like I said, very seemingly tragic character, had to deal with a lot of betrayal and a lot of loss and a lot of sacrifice to preserve his essential way of life and his people. And, you know, the understanding of him becoming not as a conqueror, but as a protector. And I think it was more of him, you know, protecting and preserving his people and their way of life, kind of a situation. But yeah, great video, great series. I've kind of already really given my thoughts on a lot of these things. Hope you guys enjoyed this. There's going to be a link down below, like I said, as always, to the Amber King's channel and to this original video without my commentary. So if you want to check out this video and the Amber King, I highly suggest you do so. Go over there you know, check out his 40K content. And he makes a lot of great 40K content. He's put a lot of time and effort into a lot of these videos, so you should definitely go, you know, check him out, give him a like and a sub at the very least. What was I gonna say? There was something I was gonna say before I went into that spiel, and I'm drawing a blank now. My brain is just, I don't know. I forgot what I was gonna say. I was gonna say something, but I forgot what I was gonna say. But great video. I think I know what I was gonna talk about. I know that there were a lot of long periods of time throughout this series of videos where I just kind of let the video play without any kind of reactions. And it's because I'm trying to, I wanted to get kind of the whole picture in and find really a proper place to pause so that I could then give my thoughts. And I even went back and kind of rewound a couple times and rewatched a few things, but I hope overall you guys enjoyed, you know, my reaction to this mini-series. Well, it became a mini-series, the series here that I put together of this one video, and I definitely plan on getting into more of the primarchs in the future. I think we might actually, I might do, because of Mortarion and their kind of opposition, I might do Mortarion, blah, blah, blah. I don't know why I'm like pronouncing his name weird. I might do him next, just as a follow-up to this, because it seems kind of a natural lead from this video to go into him next, into the Death Guard next. So I might do that, and I might do a little switch on and off where we do a loyalist Primarch and their legion, and then a traitor Primarch and their legion, and just kind of go back and forth until we go through all of them. Let me know in the comments if that's what you guys want me to do, or if you guys have someone else you prefer me to get into next. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video here. I greatly appreciate you guys watching here to the very end. It means a lot. If you did enjoy this, do consider leaving a like and a sub, as it helps me and it helps the channel grow, and I greatly appreciate it. If you want to go that extra mile and support me even more, you can click the join button down below and see if any of the YouTube membership tiers have any kind of interest for you guys. I do a lot of these reactions live for some YouTube members, and we have some exclusive discussions about a lot of the stuff that go on. So if you want to join in some of those discussions, and there's a lot more stuff that I plan on adding in the future. When we do game night, you can have some priorities to join in community game nights, some other exclusive videos. I plan on, I've been finally had the time to start reading the first book in the Horus Heresy, Horus Rising here. So I plan on getting in and doing, I want to do some streams to go over kind of some book reading discussions. So I think what I want to do with those is during the actual live stream, have that available to everyone. But then I think I want to make, I might make the VODs available to the tier 1 members, that whatever the $2 tier is, I forget what I named it. So yeah, anyway, if any of that stuff has interest to you guys, I hate doing the shameless, I hate doing the plugs, but it is what it is. So I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all the love and support. And yeah, let me know down in the comments below if you want me to go on to Mortarion, the Death Guard guys next, or if there's anyone else you guys want me to look at. But again, appreciate you guys. Thanks very much. I'll see you all on the next one.